students, welcome to the lecture on loss prevention and control. And after this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain the loss prevention policy. Discuss about the types of property. Understand the loss and loss control. Explain loss control and risk management. Discuss the legal disaster. Explain crisis management. Let's start with the concept of loss prevention and control. Loss prevention is an attitude which directs us to act or operate in a safe and secure manner and to prevent losses before they occur. To achieve this, one must adopt a set of rules and procedures to ensure that one is adequately protected from all the risks to which one are exposed, and this in all areas of activity of the municipality. In order to reduce the risk of loss or destruction of insurance or the risk of civil liability lawsuits, develop and implement a loss prevention program to guide the activities. The development of such a program is truly a pledge to the citizens and denotes an administration determined to protect its customer as well as the community. In order to assist in loss control endeavor, it will be outlining certain risks which can lead to frequent losses or claims or which represent special hazards. A loss prevention program must not be seen as complicated and time-consuming. Let us now discuss the loss prevention policy. The loss prevention program must begin with a declaration of a prevention and loss control policy from top management. A good policy makes it easier to enforce safe practices and conditions to implement company goals, to follow safety rules, and to maintain equipment. Basic to a policy declaration are these statements. Safety and health of employees, the public and company is the highest priority. Prevention of accidents is more important than shortcuts or haste. Every attempt will be made to reduce the possibility of accident occurrence. The National Safety Council offers the following examples of policy statements. When workers enter the employ of this company, they have a right to expect a proper place to work and proper machines and tools to do their jobs. They can devote their energies to their work without fear of possible harm to their life and health. Only under such circumstances can the relationship between employer and employee be mutually profitable and harmonious. Now we will discuss the types of property. Because the term property is so general, there is no single widely accepted system for classifying different types of property. However, it is customary to draw a distinction between real property and personal property. Real property, it includes unimproved land and buildings and other structures attached to land. Real estate, other than all permanent property improvements, is known as unimproved land. Unimproved land is classified separately because its value may be difficult to determine and because perils that can damage unimproved land are unique. Such land may contain water, lake, river, creek, springs, or the underground water table. Mineral resources: coal, iron, oil, copper, bauxite, potash, sand or stone. Natural attractions of commercial value: a cave, therapeutic spring or pool, historic site or artifacts, growing plants, timber, fruit trees or pasture land, or resident wild animals. Buildings and other structures can be subdivided into various categories. Their exposure to loss depends primarily on their type of construction, occupancy, protection against fire and other perils, and location. A sprinkled building probably is much less likely to suffer a major fire loss than an identical but unsprinkled building. Buildings and other structures under construction are subject to special hazards. Their security is relatively poor compared to that of completed structures. Fire detection and suppression devices may not be operational, and there are many open spaces through which a fire can spread. Personal property. It includes all property other than real property and can be classified as either tangible or intangible. Real property is the rough legal equivalent of the more common term real estate, meaning land and things of value permanently attached to it, such as buildings, other structures, and things growing on land. Personal property is all tangible property other than real estate. Tangible property, both real and personal, is subject to both physical damage, including destruction, and wrongful taking. When property is damaged, destroyed, or wrongfully taken, the owner or user of that property can lose much more than the value of the property itself. He or she might lose the use of that property as a way to earn income or other benefits. Tangible property includes money and securities, accounts receivable, inventory, furniture, equipment and supplies, machinery, data processing hardware, software and media, valuable papers, books and documents, mobile property such as automobiles, aircraft and boats. Many items of intangible property are legal rights rather than things. Now moving on to the next topic. Now we will study the loss and loss control. When property is damaged, there may be both direct and indirect losses. A direct loss occurs when there is damage to property, as when a fire damages a home. Indirect loss occurs when a direct loss causes expenses to increase or revenues to decline. Because of this dual nature of property losses, many insurance contracts insure both direct and indirect losses in the same contract. Indirect losses are more difficult to identify than direct property losses. One can see a machine and measure its value, but we cannot see the lost profits if the machine is unavailable for several months. It is difficult to estimate how long a machine or a building will be unavailable after a loss, or whether a loss will occur during a busy season or a slack period. The process begins with a forecast of expected income under normal circumstances. A second estimate of post-loss income follows. The difference is the potential income loss following a direct loss. In insurance, a prediction must be made from actual experience or statistical analysis of the number of losses to be expected within a group of exposures. The law of large numbers tells us that actual losses will be more accurate as the number of units of exposure increases. Liability losses. Liability insurance is designed to pay on behalf of individual, a business or an organization the actual damages that the insured becomes legally obligated to pay. With the number of lawsuits filed daily and the ever-increasing size of the judgments awarded, liability insurance is a necessity for businesses and professionals as well as for many individuals. Loss control. The most effective method to control insurance costs is to prevent losses from occurring pre-loss and to also contain the extent of losses after they occur post-loss. Any accident, fire, or explosion in a home or place of business may mean family disruption or the loss of community prestige, employee morale, and customer goodwill. In addition to these intangible costs, there can be property loss and injury to employees that could add up to thousands of dollars in medical and legal expenses. By working closely with the policyholder, a loss control program can be individually planned. Surveys. Unsafe practices and conditions in modern operations are a major source of potential losses. Loss control studies these practices and conditions and recommends changes that need to be made. When accidents occur, the causes should be investigated to reduce the chance of a recurrence. Protection. Loss control assists a company in developing ways to protect from special hazards, which include machine guarding, power presses and other process machines which present serious accident exposures are studied for the purpose of suggesting practical guarding techniques. Noise control. Sound measuring, noise control programs and preliminary noise level surveys are conducted.
Risk management. Hi, this is Marudhu Pandin here to give a quick intro of how to manage risks that occur during projects. So what is risk actually? A risk is something that may or may not happen. Let's go with an example. Assume that you have an important meeting to attend that you don't want to miss. To arrive at time you have to find all the risks that are lying ahead in your journey. You might encounter a bad traffic congestion or your car may break down due to flat tire. In order to deal with risk in anything, we need a set of tools and techniques for identifying and assessing these risks. Let us see a model of managing risk, what Barry Boehm calls as risk engineering. The stages are: 1. Risk identification, 2. Estimation, 3. Evaluation, 4. Planning, 5. Control, 6. Monitoring, and finally we have directing and staffing. Risk identification is listing all the risk that can affect the successful execution of the project. Risk estimation is about assessing the impact of each risk and their likelihood. Risk evaluation is about ranking the risks and determining the strategies for solving the risk. Planning is about developing plans to solve the risk and add it to the right place in the project progress to avert the risk. Control is the main function of the manager to minimize risks and react to the problems that might occur in the project. Monitoring is an ongoing activity to assess the importance and likelihood of the risk as the project proceeds. The last stage is the work of the manager to direct the staff and provide resources to them to tackle the risk. Risk engineering must be carried out by a separate team to effectively identify and solve the risks. These steps only provides a framework for managing risk. One should design techniques as per their.
Let's know the meaning of loss control and risk management. Risk management occupies an important place in the broad definition of management that devoted to minimizing the adverse effects of accidental loss on the organization. Given this focus on accidental losses, risk management as a managerial or administrative process may be defined as a process that includes the 4 functions of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling the activities of an organization in order to minimize the adverse effects of accidental losses on the organization at reasonable cost. This definition stresses the managerial aspects of risk management in carrying out decisions with respect to potential accident losses. Risk management also may be defined in terms of making these decisions. As a decision-making process, risk management is a sequence of 5 steps. Identifying exposures to accidental loss that may interfere with an organization's basic objectives. Examining alternative risk management techniques for dealing with these exposures. Selecting the apparently best risk management techniques. Implementing the chosen risk management technique. Monitoring the results of the chosen techniques to ensure that the risk management program remains effective. Risk management focuses on accidental losses, not all losses. However, risk management professionals hold a range of viewpoints on the proper scope of the term accidental and therefore on the scope of the risk management function. In the narrowest, most traditional view, the term accidental limits the scope of risk management concerns to situations involving only pure risks. Pure risk situations offer only two possible outcomes: loss or no loss. The best an individual or organization can hope for when dealing with a pure risk is to maintain one's present position in confronting such perils as fire, machinery breakdown, illness, or being named a defendant in a lawsuit. This view excludes from the scope of risk management all exposures to loss from so-called business risks or speculative risks. Such exposures arise from uncertain situations in which three types of outcomes are possible: gain, loss, or no gain or loss. Individuals and organizations often undertake business or speculative risks willingly in the hope of gaining. In the broad view of risk management, fires, injuries, earthquakes, liability claims, and other sudden destructive events are classified as casualty risks. The categories of loss exposures within this broader interpretation of accidental loss include those arising from casualty risks, liquidity risks, market risks, political risks, and technological risks. Both safety management and insurance concentrate solely on pure risk situations that offer no opportunities for profit or other gain. Those who would eliminate all distinctions between pure and speculative risks assert that a risk management professional's fundamental concern should be an organization's overall capacity to cope with losses, regardless of whether those losses stem from such casualties as fires and lawsuits or from poor business decisions in managing speculative risks. Comprehensive risk management should pay equal attention to managing both types of loss exposures. Isolated from one another, exposures to neither pure nor speculative risks can be managed properly. Making sound decisions about exposures to pure risks requires knowing an individual's or organization's activities and dealing with those potential accidental losses in ways that enhance the overall operating efficiency of the organization. While risk management focuses primarily on those loss exposures arising out of pure risks of accidental loss as a consequence, risk management enables an individual or organization to meet its business or other operating goals in ways that enhance operating efficiency. Identifying loss exposures, be able to do three things. Apply a logical classification scheme for identifying all possible exposures to loss. Employ proper methods for identifying those specific loss exposures that particular organization faces at a particular time. Test the significance of these actual loss exposures by the degree to which they may interfere with the achievement of the organization's basic objectives. A loss exposure is a possibility of loss, or more specifically, the possibility of financial loss that a particular entity, organization, or individual faces as the result of a particular peril striking a particular thing of value. Every loss exposure has three dimensions: the type of value exposed to loss, the peril causing loss, the extent of the potential. Loss exposures are typically categorized in terms of their first dimension, the nature of the value exposed to loss. All financial losses that are the concern of risk management, excluding losses of purely sentimental value, can be categorized as property losses, net income loss, liability losses, or personal losses. Net income loss is the second major type of loss exposure. The hospital suffered income loss because some of the prospective patients chose to defer elective surgery or to have it performed in some other safer hospital. With respect to extra expense, the hospital incurred additional costs in overtime for its maintenance crews, cleaning the grounds, and in making special arrangements for temporary substitute parking facilities. Loss histories are a record of past losses. Prior accidents and lawsuits may well repeat themselves unless the organization's operations have changed in some fundamental. For many organizations, however, records of past losses and claims may be inadequate for identifying current loss exposures because the organization is too small or too young to have generated a credible loss record. Financial statements are another method of identifying loss exposure. These financial statements must include balance sheets, profit and loss statements, and funds flow statements for a series of years. Profit and loss statements are often called income statements, and funds flow statements may be labeled sources and users of funds. Professional liability insurance protects one's business from potentially catastrophic litigation caused by charges of professional negligence or failure to perform his professional duties. Whether the claim is baseless or not, mounting a legal defense can bankrupt a company. Professional liability insurance protects a company from its future by responding to professional liability claims and helping the professional keep his business operating as potential lawsuits move through the courts. Without it, a company could be financially overwhelmed. Professional liability insurance is especially essential in today's legal environment where the boundaries and definitions of professional requirements and duties are largely legally undefined. Unlike lawyers and other professionals who have an established body of tort or contract law from which to draw computer, professionals are often in legally uncharted territory. What this means for the professional is that he may be liable tomorrow for actions which are today completely in line with present consulting expectations. Professional liability insurance protects against the unknown and the unforeseeable. Professional liability insurance covers crucial aspects of one's business and his interactions with clients. General principles and rules. Professional liability policies are designed to protect the practitioner from liability for acts or omissions performed as a result of his or her practice. The following paragraphs tell of a few instances where the courts may closely scrutinize one's actions. Locality rule. Most jurisdictions have now abandoned the locality rule as a standard in judging negligence. It is generally recognized in most malpractice cases that the locality rule has become obsolete. Expert testimony. Generally, the only situation in which an absence of expert testimony is excused is when the lack of skill or care of the professional is so apparent that the average layman could understand and recognize it, and where express warranties or results were made. Wrongful birth. These are actions brought against medical facilities and doctors by parents of healthy, normal children who were unwanted and usually resulted from the failure of contraceptive devices or as a result of unsuccessful sterilization operations and even ineffective abortions. Such an action may also be brought against a doctor who negligently gives incorrect advice regarding the probability of the birth of a defective child born as a result of failed or improperly made tests or failure to make proper tests initially. Types of policies. Following are some insurance policies such as related policy. An insurance policy issued at a higher than standard premium rate to cover higher than standard risk. For example, an insured who has impaired health or hazardous occupation. All risks policy. Coverage by an insurance contract that promises to cover all losses except those losses specifically excluded in the policy. To be covered for damage or loss under a basic contract, the damage or loss must be caused by a peril that is named or listed in the contract. Consequently, if damage or loss is caused by a peril that is not named, there is no coverage.
In this scenario, Studio 6, a visual effects studio, is nearing the end of a big project for a client when tragedy strikes. Long before anything happened, Studio 6 was smart and did a few things to cover themselves in case of a situation just like this. In order to do that, they needed a few things. First, they need a list of available freelancers and their contact info, something every studio should have on hand. Second, they should have a good relationship with another studio. In case of emergency, they might be able to help out. Next, they need some type of insurance plan in case things go bad. They also need a lawyer. Another big thing they need is an emergency fund with a pre-calculated amount of money available. They also need all of their employees' contact information, another thing that any company should always have. And last but not least, they should have an emergency clause in every contract with every client they do work for. After all, that's what the lawyer is for. In this particular scenario, the incident happened sometime after work hours. On the floor above Studio 6's office, a small fire is started, triggering the smoke alarm and setting off the sprinklers for the entire building. This results in servers getting wet and frying them. Once this is discovered, the owner of the company is notified. The first step is to assess the damages. This means totaling up everything that was damaged. The second step is contacting the network admin to see if any of the files on the server can be salvaged. In this scenario, everything is lost. The third step is to file a claim with the insurance company. This is where the damage assessment comes in handy. The fourth step is discussing the legal issues with the lawyer. The studio owner talks about liability, the contract with the client, and anything else needed to make sure that they're safe. The fifth step is securing freelance help. Sending emails to as many freelance artists as possible, since so much time was lost and needs to be made up for. The sixth step is notifying the client of the incident. It doesn't need to be over-detailed, but they should be informed what has happened and reassured that you have things under control. The seventh step is briefing the employees on the situation. Tell them to come in early, bring personal computers, etc. This leads to the eighth step. Securing off-site files saved by employees who worked on things from home. At this point, any work that can be salvaged is a huge step ahead. And lastly, the ninth step is having all funds liquid. This means using the money to buy new computers, a new server, pay freelancers, and pay employee overtime fees, along with any other costs needed to get the project done sooner. Over the next couple weeks, the employees, along with the help of freelance artists, managed to finish the project only slightly after the original deadline. Now that the project is finished and things at Studio 6 are getting back to normal, there are a few things that need to be done in order to save face and learn from the experience. 1. Send out a letter of apology to the client. Even if it was only a slight inconvenience to the client, they should still feel secure in knowing that Studio 6 feels bad about the incident. 2. Transfer the insurance money back into the emergency fund. You never know when it will be used next. 3. Send out a survey to the client asking how they thought you handled the situation. Also, send out less formal surveys to all the employees for an inside opinion. 4. begin holding crisis meetings every 4 months, making sure that all employees are prepared for something similar in the future and that all records and information are up to date. 5. Talk to the building owner about getting the water spouts in the server room turned off or removed if possible. Anything that can be done to prevent the same incident from happening again. With all of these steps in place, Studio 6 can.
Crisis management involves planning, organizing, leading, and controlling assets and activities in the critical period immediately before, during, and after an actual or impending catastrophic loss to reduce the loss of resources essential to the organization's eventual full recovery. In everyday language, a crisis is a turning point in a sequence of events, a point in time at which crucial actions or events significantly shape the future. In risk management, an imminent or occurring peril that can cause a catastrophic loss is a crisis because people's actions relative to that peril can significantly shape the future by increasing or decreasing the severity of the resulting loss. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Loss control is a proactive approach to preventing accidents and resulting injuries and property damage. Loss control requires the commitment of everyone at all levels: agency directors, risk management contacts, safety directors, and employees. Real property is the rough legal equivalent of the more common term real estate, meaning land and things of value permanently attached to it, such as buildings, other structures, and things growing on land. Hazards are situations or factors that increase the possibility of a loss occurring or increase the probable size of a loss should a loss occur. Risk management occupies an important place in the broad definition of management that devoted to minimizing the adverse effects of accidental loss on the organization. Financial statements are another method of identifying loss exposure. These financial statements must include balance sheets, profit and loss statements, and funds flow statements for a series of years.